So welcome to Markers and Milestones, where we explore educational opportunities for young men and women beyond traditional college, all from a Christ-centered perspective. I'm Lee Bortons, and I'm with my co-host, Jeremiah Wentz. Today is Wednesday, August 21st, 2024, and we're joined by Ken Steorts of Visible Music College. Ken, welcome to Markers and Milestones.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you were willing to come on. With running classical conversations, we have 120,000 homeschooled children in the program this year, and a lot of them are into Christian music and worship and really are faithful to their churches. And the whole point of Markers and Milestones is to have them think about doing other things to get that their career going or their training so that they can serve the Lord and not just do the obvious. So I'm so excited to hear what you're doing there at Visible Music College, and we will let our families know. So why don't you introduce yourself some more and tell us about Visible and its vision, and then we have a lot of questions for you.
Okay. I grew up, I didn't grow up in the church, but I was radically saved in college and was a musician at the time, and ended up finding out about church and church music and church camps and all kinds of things I had no clue existed, and ended up writing worship songs and all those kind of things while I was doing my music production degree. And then I did a degree in master's in composition. And so I was sort of hard rock music guy, church worship, writing original music for the church, and then getting my master's in composition, sort of modern bleeps and blurps, I call it, the classical world of modern music, and playing in Christian bands. And this was just in the 90s. I was at a discipleship house with guys very serious about the Lord, serving the church, and in Memphis. And alongside some other guys, our pastor said, "Hey, why don't you guys that are serious about music, why don't you start a band and call it Skillet, and throw all the different styles of music together?" And we were like, "Well, that's a silly name, but we like playing music together. Let's do a song." And he pitched us, and we got signed to a record deal. And it was just, our heart was for local church and worship and original heavy music. So we did all that. But the school was really as a concept of being on the road and seeing, I had my master's degree. I'm playing this 4-chord heavy music every night, worshiping the Lord. And I thought, these young people at the churches, it was always an opening band. They're either lovely youth group kids with not a lot of talent yet or a lot of guidance, or amazing young bands. I thought, these guys, I hope they're in the church in 4 years after they go through university, because we know what that does. So it's fame and behind the scenes of Christian music. I just developed this idea to, maybe there's a place for devoted followers of Jesus Christ who can stay in the Word, grounded in community, and become skillful players. And why not do it? So foolishly, I embarked on the establishment of what came to be a accredited college in 2000. We started with 21 students, and so we're celebrating 25 years this year. 1,100 students later, and a lot of employed worship leaders and artists, and just total blessing. Love it every day.
So before we jump into more details about the school, you are a celebrity. Can you tell us maybe a fun story from being in Skillet and having albums go platinum? And I mean, that's an exciting life. And then maybe some advice for some person who thinks that's easy to do.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did the grueling part of the Skillet Story, the first 5 years, and living in a van and all the stuff. All my stories are probably tough ones, but a complete honor to be, at the Gospel Music Awards and interviewed by radio stations around the globe. And just this week, somebody emailing me, "Hey, your music meant a lot to me, 20 something years ago." And I'm just like, just that huge honor of, a dramatic story would be Sunshine Festival in probably 98, something up in Wilmer, Minnesota. Just a night when the crowd was so worshiping the Lord that I mean, you have that feeling, it's just, it's a feeling, but I thought, if I stop playing, if I throw the guitar down, it'll continue playing. Like, this is an unbelievable moment of worship, and there's nothing like that. I spent a lot of time personally getting to know the fans after the show and sort of establish that pan heads, they called them, or we started calling them. That was a lot of what I did. I got to, there's a story from that festival where a girl, gave her life to the Lord instead of taking her own life. And, that can never be changed through a song I wrote. So
Wow.
that's the beautiful stuff.
That's awesome. Ken, so excited to have you on. That must have been a surreal experience. Lee and Emma and I were talking here before the show started about, I was 14 when I first got your first album that came out, got it for Christmas. And I remember I wore the thing out. This was back with CDs, and it was incredible, and I loved it. And now we were talking about it, and I told Lee, I said, I am so excited to talk to you, because what you're doing now is so interesting with Visible that I just have so many questions about it, and Lee does as well. So let's talk about that. You say that Visible is not like other schools. You're actually in a band. Your students are creating music, they're recording, they're producing. How did you come up with the name Visible? Where does that come from?
Well, a friend of mine was deep into Bonhoeffer in '99 when we were kind of conceptualizing the school, and he told me he started a band called the Visible Community, and chapter 7, Cost of Discipleship. And
Right.
we were all reading Bonhoeffer, and I was like, do you mind if I use the name for this new school? Like, we're going to develop this thing as a Christian creative community, not a college or program. Where, like, let's develop a community. Let's live in community as close as we can, and then out of that, train and grow. And so Visible is our ministry word. Instead of being called Ministry Music College, Visible is that's the church being the salt and light outside the walls of the building.
That's awesome. And you use the word community there. I love that. One of the things that you say on your website, Ken, is you say the challenge of a young Christian creative today is enormous.
Yes.
Unpack that statement. Like, what challenges would you say a young Christian creative is facing today?
Well, this several ones. I can kind of form it in this triangle we have of spiritual, professional, academic. The spiritual life of any young person is well, even in a pretty supportive world, it's tough growing into adulthood. But and getting beyond your parents' faith and becoming a believer in your own right, and with the world against you, that's a hard fight. And being outside your parents' home first time, that's an amazing struggle to just find your faith for yourself. And then professionally, Christian musicians, you're really constantly battling the message and the music, the skill and the application of it, and what God wants you to do with your gift. And I think that's Os Guinness says you're called to be a faithful Christian. That's the call. And then the application is maybe you're also a musician, so the calling, following that call, is being faithful and then finding a creative application that is somewhat limited by the content. You have to admit that you're not just going to write about everything, or at least make public you're writing about everything. I like to encourage young people to write about it, and older people, first-time songwriters. I work with folks, and just write story and write the thing that's happening in your heart and the things going on. And then, not every song should you record. Some of it's for you and the Lord, but and then what to do with that as a creative, to go to college or just become a star. You have two options: become famous or go to college. It's a misnomer on both sides. And so yeah, it's a difficult decision. And that's why we try to put whatever I would tell you to do as an artist, if you were an up and coming artist, we try to make that be Visible Music College.
That's so good. T-Bone Burnett, he said, I could either write songs about the light or I could write songs about what I see because of that light. I love like what you said there about, we're called to be faithful Christians. Then everything outside of that, what we do is the profession is actually the application of that. But we kind of take our faith and then move that into actually how we walk it out. And it bleeds out into everything. Was it C.S. Lewis is one of the books that our challenge student reads with Mere Christianity, and he says, I believe in Christ like the sun has risen. Not only do I see it, but by it I see everything else. So kind of that faith illuminates everything, and makes it, I guess, visible, so that you can really walk out your gifts and your callings that you have. I love that.
Yes.
So you took a lot of risk trying to get a school to get together. We're all aware of that on our sides of life. What do you attribute your success to? Did you just know what you were doing? Did you get some good sponsors behind you? Have you had great professors? Like what makes it so that it's successful? So I really want my children to go and be mentored by you guys.
Yeah, I wish I knew more on the front end about sponsors and grants and trustees, any of those things. I have to admit total ignorance and sort of a can-do spirit and God will make a way for the thing he's called me to do. In that regard, we've struggled as a small school every year since, but I think there's a lot of, and on the staffing, I wouldn't have answered about the staffing. I've had great people around me, but the church is full of people who are ready to train others, and they're stuck in jobs not doing the thing within the kingdom. They're doing other jobs, teaching somewhere. They're performing. They've given up on music. There's so many staff members, faithful people. That's what I found as we built communities in multiple cities. That's been a huge blessing to see the talent and the depth of the bench for God's trainers, to be honest.
You said you started back in 2000, so you're coming up on the 25-year anniversary, and you said it's been a struggle at sometimes being a smaller school, but you also mentioned 1,100 people raised up and sent out. That's a tremendous legacy that you have there. So congratulations on that as well. Let's talk about how much the world has changed since that time. 25 years? For example, like in the last 25 years, we have social media now, attention spans have decreased, society has gone through all these different shifts. Can you compare for us, Ken, like what students that you saw back in those first few years compared with the students that you see now? Like how are they alike? How are they different? What do you see?
Well, what occurs to me first is the relative innocence you would look at students 25 years ago had in their own lives, because they, and some ignorance, which is, probably welcome at this point, based on how much young people know about the world or can know about the world at too early an age, and just, a little bit overwhelming the nature of man. I think people came with a little more openness to be taught. It's more of a self-motivation now, which I think's good. There's a good part to self-motivation now that wasn't there as much. There was more. I think it's actually come back around. What's interesting is I think that we're starting to get savvy enough. Feels like the culture's finally turning. Maybe the church is stepping in and doing something about it. I don't know. To where people are now suspect again of what they've been told and from the culture, and they're beginning to want to be taught again and told from older people in the church. I feel like there's sort of been this 20-year arc within the 25 that just the last few years, but it's not from an innocence like it used to be. It's from a broken innocence, sort of like a mistrust. And there's an opportunity, I think, for Christian colleges and mentors to be, let me tell you exactly what to do. It's nothing like what you heard, because you have heard everything. So now we're maybe returning to a spot where this last generation, the last 4 years maybe, they're arriving at college and they strangely need to be told a little more. And I'm encouraging our staff to do that, to be the adults and don't shrink back because we believe they've heard it. They've not really heard the beauty of the world as much as they used to.
Yeah, I like how you put that, the beauty of the world. That does feel like what's been lost. And I can see what you're saying too with our student body, that the young people who really embrace their faith, they're asking really good questions again. They're not just accepting what's happening. And so it's a really great opportunity. So tell us more about, because I'd asked about your staff too. Like, it'd be great to have our children, be taught by you, and you said other people are so excited to train. Do you look for specific qualifications, like, because you're trying to combine the spiritual business professional, do they have to have been professionals in the industry also? Or are these more academic types? What are you looking for? Who would I have? Who's there?
I would take it in exactly this order: spiritual, professional, academic. And all three are important, but this is the order we take them. Serious about their faith, committed to the local church and the fidelity of the word. Like, with bar none, belief in Orthodox Christianity, and conservative biblical interpretation. So there, you got to be, that's a pool that gets smaller. And then they have to be professionals who have had some experience in the artistry side, or in their field, have some stage experience and professional, paid to do what they're doing. As a worship leader, somebody who's done it before, and they're not just academic or they're just totally independent. They've done real work on the stage and people have paid them for it. And then academic, everyone has a master's degree or a doctorate. And really, anytime you go out of that order, you're working against yourself with Visible's model, because people with advanced degrees typically were taught by people with advanced degrees at places with advanced degrees, with ivory towers of advanced degrees. And what we're trying to do is build a community that exists, and therefore we should be teaching out of our experience in a very practical manner. It really is a system that's not too hard to figure out, but universities just won't do it this way. And it's no, though I've given away the concept 25 years in a row, it's just being smart about how you train young people who are creatives to work together and have time recording and writing music and sharing things and communicating through contracts, just practicing what you do, and all the faculty knowing what each other is teaching within those courses and how it lines up. It's a beautiful space when you find those folks, but starting with the spiritual side, people that really want to care for young people.
Yeah.
And then how do you find, when you call them creatives, and I love that. So when the creatives show up, are they excited about the business model part of what you're teaching them? Do they have some entrepreneurial spirit to them? Like, what's that like?
They do more than they used to. They're aware. Typically, if they're in the music side, we do teach musicians, producers, managers, videographers, and ministry, maybe youth ministers, that kind of. So, but most of them they're very creative people, or they've been around creative people. They understand. I kind of make my 25-year joke is, hey, welcome to Visible. You're gonna be self-employed for the rest of your life. Let's get to work. We focus on the drive to do that, and but most of them now are a little bit savvy. They've learned all the things on YouTube from how to run production. Maybe the vocalists not as much. They're not very techy, but they're ready to take on the work. Generally, there's less make me a star these days, which is pretty good.
Let's talk about that, because that's really interesting. You guys, obviously, you said you have worship ministry is a big one, but and through the small class sizes, lots of hands-on experience. One of the main things that it looks like, that I'm hearing you train young creatives for as a career in worship ministry. Lots of questions about this because this is such a unique and fascinating career choice that really wasn't around
Yeah.
in a way that we know of it until recently. Like you had your Levites in scripture, maybe some church organists through the years, but in terms of what we think of when we normally say like a worship leader, with a guitar standing on a stage, most people would say that's still a fairly new incarnation, and with it come a lot of challenges. How do you navigate that and prepare someone for kind of such a unique field that's obviously gone through a lot of changes even in the last 25 years since you started Visible?
We've always focused on we're a music school, not the theology department at a school training worship leaders, but we focused on the leadership element, and the spiritual. Once again, spiritual comes first.
Right.
The life in the Word, going through the Word all 3 years. It's ultimately, if it's a perfectly run program, you go through a 3-year bachelor's degree, and you go through the Bible 3 times in the arc of the years to know the Word, focus on sort of that servant leadership, sort of Levite type model, but without that language as much. And then the skill that they learn by just practically doing it. It's very much lab all the time. There's multiple gathered worship times each week. They start, Monday will be the first day of our year, and Tuesday, brand new worship leaders will be leading with Planning Center online and they schedule me like as a speaker. I'll get an email from a freshman like, "Hey, you're up to speak. What are you going to speak about? We need your slide early." I'm like, wow, these guys, they're bossing me around. But it's the practical, it's living the Christian life with them in community, like as they do the practical work. And we sort of just get on past what if a pastor, the different denominational lines, the different ways of looking at worship, what this kind of church likes, this kind of song or stream. We discuss all that as it comes up, but we just get into it pretty quick. And it's also a very diverse group, ethnically and regionally, international students coming, and it's a beautiful dynamic.
Well, I think
Yeah.
that says a lot for your leadership style too, to be that accessible to the students that they can reach out and schedule on Planning Center. Like you said, a freshman could say, "Hey, it's your turn to speak." I think that's must create a good family kind of environment. Community is the word that you used at the beginning for the school. And that's really, I think, speaks highly for you. The question, maybe let's lean into a little bit. You have social media now, of course, and a lot of people who want to be worship leaders. How do you guard them or coach them, or what advice would you have so they don't get trapped in that culture of, let's say, a Christian celebrity that often seems to follow like a worship leader just by nature of the fact that they're on a stage in front of people? How do you guard against that? What do you teach or recommend or advise people moving in that field?
I recommend everybody go to Visible Music College. No, I think, well, you have to, how do you develop a love for the local church? You really have to love others more highly than yourself.
Mm.
And it's a lifelong lesson, right? But you have to love the people that you are serving on that stage. And that's hard as anyone. And as a young person, I was so grateful. I didn't grow up in the church, so I was so grateful to be on the stage of a church. And so I think I don't teach the worship leaders directly. I would say our worship leadership instructor, probably taking a Christian person who's been in the church all their life, helps them to reimagine that you're doing God's kingdom will to serve these people in worship. It's not about your favorite song. I would encourage people to have mentors and peers in the church that can ask you why you're doing something. Be challengeable. I hate to say community every time, but that's literally it. That builds it makes the group small enough. You have to have someone to challenge what you're doing and call things out in you. That I learned it the hard way. The pastor who put the Skillet together, saved my life really through discipleship of calling me out on my business.
I love that. Love the people that you're serving in the local church. That's good.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's the only way I think you can be on stage and stay humble. It's because you do love who's in front of you more than even you love
sure.
what you're doing.
Yeah.
So this all sounds really good. So you've talked about, some of the philosophy and the folks that are leading. Tell us about the facilities and what's it like being in Memphis, and so if I send my son or daughter, what's the college life like? Give some parents some assurances that it's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We have a very small campus. It's one very modern, very cool building that was remodeled by us. The coolest mid-century modern. It's you walk in, it's glass and concrete and color, and it's just like, wow, creatives just go crazy.
I'm going to pause you right there because Ken might be underselling this just a little bit. If you go on visible.edu and you look at the photos of this place, it's really cool. So yeah, glass, the big triangle, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And so it's breathtaking. And then we built a 50-room dorm behind the triangle building, and one parking lot, and that's our campus. It's in the safest zip code in Memphis, downtown. There's a lot of our students come from all over, and rural and international, and they love being downtown. It actually sounds funny to Memphians' ears when they say, wow, downtown is so quaint and sweet, and we're all like, what, Memphis? But you're a half mile from Sun Studio, and Elvis's apartment was 2 blocks away. You're at BB King Boulevard, and all the history of Memphis music, American music really. But you're in a Christian community that's really safe, and they go shopping together at make a run out to Costco or whatever, and they live this sort of downtown hipster life. And do outreach to the very people they might see on the streets. There's always need in a major city. They do attend, student life would be attending church locally at a variety of churches. There is one of our uniquenesses is we're not part of any church. We never have been officially under a church, but we are part of the church, capital C, and we talk about that. And they serve in dozens of churches, and some of them go together or drive out and serve, and even do their internships for credit. So there's, a little bit of a little cloistered type feel. We are in one building. We are doing 20 credits per semester. We're going for it. But they do 15 credits overall of internships out. We try to encourage them to go international. And they're meeting people from here's Church of God in Christ, and here's Lutheran Midwest folks, and here's somebody from Belarus they've never even heard of, whose father is in jail for Christ. It's a serious and yet fun mix at all times. It's
what a cool diverse group of people to spend your college years with. You talk about the internships, 15 hours of internships that they do. Let's talk about that. When you're leading creatives, like if you're hiring somebody or you're managing a creative team, we often think of people who are creatives as working in a very free or unconventional way. Whereas like a church leadership environment might be more structured or even results driven. And like creatives, you receive criticism and instruction differently than you would maybe a more engineering mindset, because everything you do and everything you create is a representation of who you are. Like you're bearing your soul to the world, right? So when you're doing an internship or or maybe running an internship and you're managing a creative person, what kind of advice would you give to both creatives walking into an environment that's a little bit more structured and less free thinking, or even to the leaders that have to be hiring and managing them?
I'd say do more oral presentation, question answer with creative people, and any creative person listening to this that ever hears this, please practice talking about what you do. That's the number one thing that creatives are terrible at, right now, tell me exactly what you're working on. What are you doing? Why do you do it? We don't want to hear that your music is unlike anything that ever happened on earth. Just tell us who you like and what you do, and be unafraid to look at somebody in the eyes and talk about what you do. 'Cause you're going to need to give feedback and talk to people about creative things. And maybe pastors can elicit that by listening, by doing a little more oral presentation, talk through things, let people kind of get that out rather than, turn in a report about something on Friday or,
Yeah, yeah.
and creatives can be naturally a little more natural pastoral folks. It's not always the case, but they kind of lean towards being the first responders, I call them, sort of like first responders to people's needs or to the spirit, and they can be vital in a church where people think everything's going on fine, and often creative people are those first responders.
When did you see that music and ministry kind of could be the same thing, that they could connect for you?
For me personally,
Well, let's say, I mean, when did you first fall in love with music and the arts? And then you said you got saved, radically saved in college. When did you realize, what's that story of saying, look, my music can be a ministry? You shared the
yeah.
story. Was there a particular moment or?
Well, what comes to mind is playing in the Christian metal band, two bands before Skillet, that we were playing a summer camp, which I never even knew there were like Christian camps. And here we were playing very evangelical music, and playing metal, and I loved it. And here's these kids come up and give their life to the Lord or renew their commitments at camp, and I was like, this is crazy. I mean, there's no way you can do the thing you love more than anything, and people are responding to Jesus and then being discipled into the church. It's like, this is, I never want to quit that.
Wow.
So if somebody loves music and loves Christian music, but doesn't necessarily want to be a worship leader at a church, and they're looking for the skill set you train them in, what are their opportunities?
Yeah, we always talk about church and industry, and whatever you're called to be, God called you to do it. And if you're going to be the next Christian superstar, or let's say, mainstream, Bono is convenient, I guess, or a worship leader of a tiny church, both of those things have the same honor and the same importance. So it's because God's calling you to it. So we train people. We started focusing on leadership about 5 years ago for all of our students, because whether you're a drummer or audio production or music business, your leadership's going to be because of your skill and character. It's going to be called upon. And so those opportunities for music production, that's another big department. Our students are in the second year, we have to help them finish school because they're already employed. Like, they are sound companies going to Nashville, doing studio work, streaming, whatever. I mean, they are scooped up by churches in the 5 minutes they've been in Memphis, and we do a 3-year bachelor's. It's really, this may be something your listeners are interested in. The 3-year bachelor's is the concept of first year, you're just doing exactly what I would tell you to do if you weren't going to college. You're recording bands, you're doing songs, you're playing shows, and so everything's great. And one English class and a little bit of worship, training and worship. And then the second year hits, you got to do gen eds. So all our gen eds are also focused on music and ministry, but it's the history of pop music, it's the history of church music, it's acoustical physics. Okay, it starts getting harder. Like, maybe I don't go to college. I'm like, hey, you finish next year. Next year's all music again, and internships. Like, you're almost there. So it's a little bit of a little gen ed sandwich or a college sandwich. Like, do the music, get good grades. You're on the honor roll. That never happened before. Now you're second year. Hey, you can do this. You're now a leader. And pretty soon you'll be planning your senior concert and going on. I mean, we have literally students going on tour with Christian artists all the time, playing guitar for Christian bands or doing merch, doing tours, going out doing and doing missions to Albania. You know, like literally constant. So it's a little bit of help them get acclimated to what college can be like, then spring on them one tough year, and then sort of release them into practicing their ministry already, you know, and those opportunities are with churches and missions organizations, you know, mainstream, some just audio companies, things that are not necessarily Christian, but most end up in something that's ministry focused.
Mhm. So that makes me think of two questions. One, you've mentioned a couple times you are accredited, and it really is a college. Who accreditates you?
We're accredited by TRACS, the Transnational Association of Christian Colleges and Schools. Got about 80 schools and conservative Christian circles, and we are the one that has the rock and roll president, and we love all these guys, and it's a national accreditation, so there's a little bit of you know, smaller schools involved, but get the, you know, we get federal aid as the and loans, those kind of things as a backstop. If you haven't saved for college, you can access those funds, things like that.
Yeah, you're part of, for our listeners are familiar with Patrick Henry and with
Oh yeah, they
New
started
St.
the same.
Andrews, and a lot of the schools that homeschoolers go to are part of tracks or
Oh,
yeah, you said tracks, right?
yeah. Patrick Henry started the same year we did, and just meeting them was like, hey, you're the government version of our music entertainment. And
Right.
I love their concepts. Yeah.
And then you said something really interesting about how the students are, you know, almost employed as soon as you get them, which lends me to this question. A lot of Christian schools are struggling, and it looks like to me one of the reasons they struggle is their alumni are not very good at giving back compared to, say, secular, private, small colleges.
Yes.
Your alumni are going right into a business that makes no money unless they're super lucky and successful. So are you doing something to help them understand about giving back? Like, what's the expectation?
Well, let me say that they're going into a business that is known to not be highly profitable, but they're going into solid jobs where they can raise their families, you know, and that is different. And that's one of our specialties, and one of the things we say to parents. There really are jobs on the other side of, you know, a true music degree when you're trained properly. But I would say to any of our alumni listening, start giving right now, because I have done a terrible job training you to give to the college. I lament all the private schools that get all my donors give more to these large schools with all the money that are not Christian. I don't even understand kingdom people giving to, I don't understand it, to be honest. But yeah, the expectation, I think, is to stay in touch. You're part of the community forever. And when you are doing front of house sound for Chris Stapleton, like we have a guy right now, or you're touring as a drummer for Mosaic, you know, send us some videos, do some interviews, remind people that you came through Visible. And that's more what they do. We're supported more by ministry and business people that kind of understand the artists and appreciate the artist training. One of my trustees actually said, this may not be the right way to say it, but we got parents on here, they understand. Just help them become productive citizens, Ken. And I'm like, okay, that's what we'll do. We'll help them become productive citizens instead of just crazies and, you know, creative crazies.
Yeah. And then another thing parents want to know is, tell us, it's a 3-year program and you get your bachelor's. What's it cost, and how is food dealt with, and how's housing dealt with? You told us about the dorm, but what are the costs associated? And is there men's and women's dorms, or like, give us that.
There's one facility for housing, and you're required to stay there the first 2 years. And there's men's floors and women's floors that are separated and have different leadership. And there's pretty conservative, curfews and access and all those things, and a lot of things that we do to ensure those upright relationships. And we actually encourage we encourage students that do have relationships with other students to have mentors on staff and be a part of that growth period. Food is kind of interesting. We have a cafe that is not endless Coke and pizzas. It is foodstuffs you might recognize as actual items of God's creation.
Real food.
A cucumber, a bag of almonds, and we make sandwiches and breakfast together. I say I'm not really involved in that daily, but our staff does breakfast together with some recognizable food, some kind of light lunch, and then students can kind of use some of the groceries from the cafe to have food in their rooms. And I tried to push more healthy, but that's as healthy as we can get. Is we're not destroying them. We're at least giving them the options for real food. And it costs Visible costs $22,000 a year for 3 years. So that's very reasonable. About 96% of our students get scholarships, aid, very much a ministry family school. A lot of folks have parents in ministry. They understand that. We love ministry people trusting us with their kids. And if you're in the housing is $7,000 extra for the whole year, those numbers I've mentioned include every single possible thing. That includes the food, that includes the whatever, internet, books, materials for class, anything at all. Those are flat fees, and you can take up to 43 credits for that flat rate. So you can take 4 years if you want, but if you want the ultimate deal, and you can do dual enrollment, juniors and seniors can do dual enrollment. So you could get 30 credits out of the way ahead of time. And we're seeing that be really valuable to some folks. You can get done in 2 years, really, because some internships you do in the summer. So,
well, and Ken, let's go back. I love what you said a moment ago about how this is a profession you're walking into knowing the chances of getting rich are slim, but you can have a job and you can provide for your family, and you can be part of a cool environment where you get to do something that can have an impact and move people on a deeper level, right? There's a musician I follow called Michael Knott, and he said, guitars, guns, and girls. He said all three of those can start wars and revolutions, right? And it's kind of a funny way to say it, but there's a lot of truth in that music and art, I know you guys do a lot of performing arts as well, can be very powerful. And there's lots of examples of that through history. So it's very cool that you have this, the college, very affordable, especially comparatively if you look across the board for what you get, and you get to be part of something that's really moving people and moving the gospel forward in a community level, on a much deeper level that connects with people inside. So that's very cool.
Yeah. I also think it's good timing for you to grow now, because people are so much looking for their children to have more vocational experiences, and you've got that figured out, how to both produce, be an artist, and know a little bit of business savvy while you're at it. So I think it's going to go well for you, and I'm really glad that you've been doing this. And maybe you'll become an overnight sensation in Visible. You'll have so many students applying, you don't know what to do with them all. But so tell us how folks can learn more about you.
Yes, our website is visible.edu, visible.edu. And we also have a little site called visible25.com that folks should go watch the short film we made about Visible 25 years. And that's an impactful moment. There may be a pitch for giving in there. That's not why I'm directing you, but it's just, we're in the middle of Visible 25. But visible.edu is a place to just explore what the programs are. There's a chat on there where Jacob or Christine will pick up and talk to you guys about, I tested it yesterday. Jacob's on there 5 seconds, like, hey, what's going on? And tell you about
can we talk about how cool that is, that you're calling and you're not just getting someone in a phone farm, but Ken just says, here, Jacob or Christine will pick up the phone. They'll talk to you.
It's amazing.
Yeah. What a great family.
And Jacob's a graduate that answers the phone and does admissions. He got his master's as well from us, and is a songwriter, performer in South Carolina. And Christine is a longtime big fan, podcaster person who's lovely. She's down in Houston, and so we're good with Zoom stuff. We do some remote. If there's some reason somebody has a reason they can't be in Memphis and they want to do remote, you can dial into the class for 3 years from wherever you are. And it's not as good. You don't get to be, over at my house here with my family having dinner or whatever, but that works good too. And I think, I'm Ken at visible.edu. I'm on Facebook with my cell number. I mean, like we tell the students when they first get there, call me Dr. Ken, because everybody, that's what people want me to be. But hey, we're brothers and sisters in Christ. We're on a path as creatives. I'm performing on stage this Friday in front of them. They've never seen me really rock and do heavy music, so they'll find out in 48 hours. It's really just, we'll talk to every parent. I have 2 boys in their 20s. One attended Visible partway through, and others taking classes. I know what it's like to have kids at that age and be creatives and struggle with the church and talk through relationships, and went through the pandemic with some kids. It's like we're in the heat of it, and we love helping, wake up every day helping musicians get their footing.
Great. Well, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Ken, and we wish you well, and we'll get the word out about all that you offer. Thank you for glorifying God with your choices.
Amen. Thank you very much. It's been great being with you.
Ken, appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Bye, everyone.